Welcome to another episode of Breakfast for the Soul. We do not know what today will bring. Will we have joyful celebration, or will there be depression and anxiety? We are not in control of the world around us, and often we are not in control of what goes on inside our hearts. For no apparent reason at all, we can wake up feeling sad and depressed. You have probably heard of the saying, "woke up on the wrong side of the bed." Well, tragically, this reveals an unfortunate reality, the reality that we do not have as much control over ourselves as we think we do. Emotional instability can affect any Christian regardless of their spiritual level or how many years they've been following Christ. For example, the reformer Martin Luther, who lived almost 500 years ago, he suffered frequent bouts of severe depression and anxiety. Martin Luther was a great Christian, and in part because of him, we exist as a denomination today. He was the first to translate the Bible into German for common people to be able to read. He also wrote around 40 hymns, some of which we still sing today. Martin Luther, he left an impressive legacy, and he had a huge impact on Christianity, and yet he suffered from severe bouts of depression and anxiety. Martin Luther was not the only believer who was afflicted with these things. In Psalm 77, we read about the troubled heart of Asaph. He's crying out to God in prayer with outstretched arms, but nothing can comfort his soul. Initially, he blames God for the internal suffering and depression. In fact, God was part of the reason for his affliction. God kept his eyelids open at night. Asaph was exhausted and afflicted with insomnia, to the point where he's not even able to talk. Why do you think the psalmist became so depressed? Well, we can view these afflictions in two different ways. First, as coming from God if they lead to prayer and renewed trust in Him, or we can view them as sin if they lead to despair and unbelief. God can and will put us into spiritual and emotional turmoil to bring us closer to Him so that we may learn to trust Him more. Asaph was in pain. In his search for God's help, he was on the brink of losing trust in the Lord. Asaph questions whether God is still gracious and compassionate. Asaph is questioning whether God will stay true to His word. Then suddenly there's a shift from despair to hope. Asaph says in Psalm 77, verses 10 through 15, "I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember wonders of old. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the people. You with your arm redeemed your people, the children of Jacob and Joseph." With these words, the psalmist goes from deep despair and depression to hope and praise in God. Remembering and thinking deeply about what God has done in the past led the psalmist out of his spiritual trouble. Asaph remembers God's power, glory, and wonder that changed his perspective on his own internal despair. This recollection of the Lord and His deeds moves the psalmist from petition to praise, from worry to worship. Asaph not only remembered the great deeds of the Lord, but he meditated on them. Deep in his heart, he thought about God's great works, and that led him to trust or to have faith in God's love, grace, and deliverance. Meditation results in renewed trust in the Lord. My friends, we do not know what today will bring. Will there be sorrow or despair? Just like the psalmist and the reformer Martin Luther, we are not immune from depression and despair. God may send these afflictions upon us, but how will you respond? If we are depressed or in despair, let us ponder and meditate on the great works of God, especially on the ultimate sacrifice of His Son on the cross, Jesus Christ. Let us think about all those times that God has directly intervened in our lives. Let us think of all those times God has shown us His love, His mercy, His providence. May these thoughts and meditations turn us from despair and depression to worship and faith. Amen.